Hello, rail fans. Ram 55 here, and thanks for tuning in. This is episode 22, session 22 on my Tidewater Railroad made by Jointed Rail, and appreciate you guys following along on the journey. Today we're going to be watching Andrew bring these 3 locomotives and a whole bunch of cars up to River Point on a route that I'm calling the Loop. So basically there's 2 long cuts of cars over there to the right in the yard. The first one is the interchange cars. These were brought in by CSX and Norfolk Southern Trainz, and they dropped off some cars that are going up to the north, and they're going to link up with the Canadian National up there. The other cut of cars were also brought in by those 2 railroads, and they're going to be actually delivered to the industries up at River Point. So the Loop is basically Andrew driving to the north, taking these cars up there, dropping them off at the River Point yard, and then after doing that, he's going to grab onto a bunch of cars that are on the interchange track, and they're destined to come down here to Tidewater, where they will go to all points east and west on the Norfolk Southern and CSX railroads. And we last 3 locomotives together because this is such a long train, and the route north does have some grades to it. At some point, I think it gets up close to 1.6%, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you've got about a mile of railroad cars fully loaded behind you, that's a lot of weight, and 2 locomotives just does not cut it. I mean, they can get there, but they struggle and slow way down when they're going up those grades. So we are using 3 locomotives today. So he has brought these engines out of the barn. They've just been refueled. Now he's backing up. And the first cut of cars he's going to latch onto are the interchange cars. There's a lot of things that I like about railroading, but what's kind of displayed here on this game and the way I'm operating it is that this is a living, breathing, functioning monster of a railroad. All these cars are being moved not just because we feel like it and we want to operate trains, but they're doing a job. Every one of these cars has been brought onto this route for a specific purpose, and they're going to a specific plant, and they're needed by a specific company. So every movement here is because it has to be done. This yard is not stagnant. It's always fluctuating with cars moving down to industries, coming up from industries, being transported to other yards. It's never the same, and I really like that. Now this yard is fairly full right now. You know, there's 2 long cuts of cars that are going to be pulled out of here, and that's going to empty it out. And as they're delivered up to the River Point yard, which is right now fairly empty, that one's going to become full. And those cars will be shuffled around by the local switchers up there and delivered, and it's always in a state of flux. And I really enjoy that aspect of model railroading and railroading here on this computer simulation. Now you'll get an idea for how long this cut of cars is. You can see the engines pulling away in the distance going past that yard tower. I'm not sure the actual length, but there's quite a long string of cars here, and then this is only half of it. He's going to hook up to another long string to complete the consist. So how's everybody doing? Everybody doing all right? This video was recorded 2 days ago, and then it was edited yesterday, and today is Saturday, and I'm doing the voiceover. So I hope everybody's enjoying their weekend, getting out and doing some stuff outside. Hopefully you're having some good weather. Are any of you guys being affected by all that smoke from all the wildfires up to the north? I will work in pulmonology, so we keep a close eye on the air quality for all the people who have asthma and COPD and respiratory issues. And we've had a lot of alerts lately because of the smoke and also because of the high pollen count this year with the really dry weather that hasn't washed it all away. So hope everybody's doing well. But you can see those locomotives are now disappearing beyond those trees to the far left off in the distance. So this is a fairly long cut of cars. One of the great things about the Tidewater Railroad route made by JR is it lets you do all kinds of operations on the railroad. If you like switching, we got 2 yards you can switch. If you like picking up cars and running local trains to the local industries, we've got industries to the north and industries to the south. So you can go down and spot some cars at the industries, pick up the fulls and bring them back to the yard. So there's that operation. And today we're seeing another type of operation, and that's basically, I don't know if you would call it a manifest train. It's going from yard to yard, so I guess it could be technically. And it's a mixed train. But anyways, we're doing some over the road operating. We're not stopping off and making any deliveries along the way. We're just bringing cars from one yard to another. So we got that kind of operation going as well. So that's one of the geniuses of this railroad design, is something for everybody. Now Andrew is a good quarter of a mile away from the end of this train. There's no way he can see what's going on and how much distance there is from the cars he's backing up to the cars that he's connecting to. And that's where the conductor comes in. He's standing there and he's got a radio or a walkie-talkie and he's in communication with Andrews, and he's saying, okay, you've got 5 cars. And as it comes back, he says, okay, you got 4 cars, 3 cars, 2 cars, 20 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet. That'll do, as they make contact. And when you think about it, operating that train from a quarter of a mile away and coming up to a nice gentle coupling is a pretty remarkable feat, especially when you think there's a lot of slack in those couplers. You know, as he's backing up and he puts the brakes on, it takes a little while for that to be transmitted to that last car and to get things under control and make nice gentle contact like he did here. Is a pretty remarkable feat. Takes a lot of practice, obviously, and a lot of coordination with your crew. But anyways, Andrew did a fantastic job there. And right now, the conductor would be hooking up the air hoses, and which is basically giving the air pressure so that each individual car will have brakes. In reality, that process takes quite a while. Every one of these cars has a reservoir on it that holds compressed air that operates that train's brakes, and as they're depleted, the engine has to pump the air through those hoses car by car and recharge all those cylinders, and that takes quite a while. Thank goodness we don't have to do that here in Trainz. We can just kind of bypass that because that would make for a long and boring video. But yeah, they have to really take care of them brakes. And the other thing about the reservoirs is if you do frequent applications, that pressure goes down. And if you do it too often, you can actually deplete the reservoirs of any compressed air, and now your train has no brakes. That's a runaway. Not a good deal. So Andrew is coming up to speed. Since the end of his train still in the yard, the speed limit's 15. Once he gets that clear of the yard, the speed limit will go up to 40, and he will be on his way, non-stop up to River Point. This cut right here actually gives you a real good idea of how long this train is as it goes underneath that overpass. These well cars here are double stacked with containers. And later on in the train, you'll see that some of them are just single stacked. And you'd think, well, why would they do that? Number one, maybe they don't have enough cargo going to a particular location. They don't need to double stack. The other thing is the route itself. It may have some low bridges where they're not able to get clearance to go underneath overpasses because they're just too low, and they're forced operationally to single stack. But here on Tidewater, all the overpasses and bridges that we go under are plenty high enough, and we can easily get a double stack in. And I think from here on out, I will just use the double stack, number one, because I think it looks cooler. All right, so the tail of his train has cleared the yard. Speed limit is now 40 miles an hour, and Andrew is giving it the coals and pulling away. So here's those single stack well cars. I think in the future I'll just keep everything double stacked. But anyways, he's on his way now. Let's sit back and ride along. Now, one thing I've noticed and other viewers have also commented on, when I'm heading north toward River Point like I am right now, all the signals read correctly. I'm getting green signals approaching a new block. But when I was heading south, I was getting red signals the whole way, and I couldn't figure out why. I knew there was no railroad or no trains on the track. I knew all the switches were thrown in the correct direction. There's no reason why they shouldn't have been giving me a green signal. Well, thanks a lot to one of my viewers. I'll give a shout out to Bruce M56, who pointed out that since there's no way to turn these trains around like on a Y or on a turntable, what I had been doing was operating the trains in reverse. And apparently when you do that, even though they're on the head end of the train, operating in reverse, it screws up the signaling system for some reason, which I still don't understand. So this was my first opportunity to give that a test. When I got up to River Point, I actually put Andrew in the third locomotive in the scene here and reversed the direction using those little arrows, you know, making the circle down the bottom right. Yeah, on the drive back to Tidewater, which will actually be on my next video, which will be the second part of the loop run, all the signals were reading correctly. So, Bruce M., you are absolutely correct, so thanks a lot for that information. Worked great. I was thinking, okay, I got to go back and figure out, you know, if I have to rewire all the signals, which are actually automatic. So, anyways, worked out well. Thanks a lot for that information. So the route between Tidewater and River Point is actually pretty short. Does anybody actually know the actual distance? Have they actually measured it? If you do, leave a comment, let me know. And there are ways of actually measuring that. You can, and I've seen this done by other YouTubers, they make a train that's exactly 1 mile long and then splice it together and figure out how many miles they cover. So it can be done. And that's a lot more accurate than using that, what do they call it, the measuring tool, you know, when you're in Surveyor. Because that just records distances in a straight line, and track is not straight, so the most accurate way to do it is just make a train that's exactly 1 mile long and splice them together and figure out how far you're going. But anyways, if anybody knows how far the distance is between Tidewater and River Point, let me know. If you look at that schematic down at the bottom, it's giving you the grade of the railroad as we're moving along here, and right now it's about 1.73%, and a little bit further down the road it's actually steeper than I thought, about 1.8%, so almost 2%. And for a train, that's a pretty steep grade. You really need all the power in the locomotives to get up those hills, and thank goodness they also have a lot of momentum. Obviously this train weighs, I don't know how many tons, but it takes a while to slow down, and that gives you some momentum going up the hills. But you still need that power, and you'll see that even with the 3 locomotives, they struggle to keep it 40 miles an hour. can see that Andrew has the throttle wide open, yet he was still losing speed as he was going up that steep grade. Now when those tracks come in on the left there, that's actually tracks that are leading off to the staging yard, the northwest staging yard. That means we're getting close to the yard up here at River Point. So Andrew's now going to start using that grade to slow down to the track limit of 15 miles an hour in the yard. Now I told you in previous videos that I didn't really think I would need all the yard space that there was here up at River Point, and I actually shortened the yards. Well, I proved myself wrong. So I went back and lengthened those yards again. And it's a good thing I did, because this is a long train and we just barely had enough room to get this train on 2 different tracks. So he's coming into the inbound track right now. And Andrew's gonna have to cut this train in half to get it to fit into the 2 yard tracks. And he's going to cut it exactly where they were cut when they were down at Tidewater. There's going to be the interchange section, and then there's going to be the local delivery section. So that'll make it nice and convenient. You can see here how I've lengthened the track again primarily over on the left side, and it also made the curves entering the yard much better looking, so I'm happy with the way that turned out. And that group of tracks on the right side where those box cars and other cars are waiting, they've been lengthened on the other end. Those are going to be, I think, basically my sorting tracks. You can see just to the left of where the locomotive is, those far tracks, the 4 tracks on the far left, they've been lengthened again. And again, I think it just looks better. And I think I'm going to need that space. So Andrew's going to be pulling far enough forward to try and clear the switch at the other end of the yard, the one that he approached from. As it turns out, didn't quite pull up far enough, and that could just be that the yard track was just a little bit too short, but he could have pulled up about another car length too to free up that switch. Not that it's going to matter that much. Because just like at Tidewater, you want to keep this track open for trains that are coming in from either the east or the west. So Jane, is it Jane? I can't remember. Is waiting up here. So once Andrew has done his job of dropping these cars off, she's going to hop into action and get the cars sorted on those tracks right there in the middle of the screen, and off of the inbound track and off of the drop-off track as quickly as possible. And we'll show that on another video. So right at the end of those auto racks where the well cars start is where Andrew's going to make the cut. So he'll try to pull those up far enough forward that the far end of the yard will be freed up and it won't be hanging over that switch. Unfortunately, didn't quite go far enough, but again, not a big deal. Then he'll take the cars that are still attached to the locomotive and put them on the next track over on the left, which will be the drop-off track, and that will let, I think it's Jane, start doing her job. And again, this is showing the living, breathing characteristics of a railroad. This yard was pretty empty, but just this one train coming in, the loop train, has basically filled this yard up again. So things are always evolving, and I really like that about the railroading. It'd be interesting to watch the journey of one particular car, how it comes in to this area on a train, gets dropped off in the yard, gets moved around to another yard perhaps, and then delivered to an industry where it's filled up or emptied, gets put back on the yard track and added to another train heading in another direction, and then will eventually leave the route. So this railroad and the way I run it is all about the operation. It's not about just randomly moving cars around. They're here to do a job, and I think that's pretty cool. I use the same concept when I fly my flight simulator. You know, you can just kind of putz around and go from one airport to another with no purpose. But if you have a schedule or have devised a scheme to make a purpose to your flying, it actually adds a lot to the immersion. So you're actually doing a job. You're going to pick people up or dropping some cargo off or whatever. But it gives a real purpose to your flying. It also gives you the ability to go to places and land at airports that you ordinarily would not have, and experience all different kinds of weather as well. So I like that. This is a real job. It has a real purpose aspect to my simulators. So not only here on Trainz, but also on the flight simulator as well. So Andrew has cleared the switch, and he's backing this cut of cars back up into the drop-off track. These are the cars that are on the interchange, so they're going to be picked up by eastbound and westbound Canadian National trains, and the local switcher will actually have to sort them. They're just kind of all grouped together right now, but she'll have to separate them for those cars going to the east and those cars going to the west. Again, another video on the way. Now, as Andrew's pushing these cars back, he would have probably somebody riding or hanging on the ladder on the last car in contact with him to let him know how much room he has to back up. But unfortunately, with me being the sole operator, operating or functioning both as the engineer and the conductor, I have no idea how much room is at the back without actually moving the camera and going back and take a look. And I kind of chickened out. I didn't want to run into the train, the cars that we just dropped off on the inbound track. So it's not cheating, but I just was concerned. So I moved the camera over to this vantage point, and I realized, oh, we got plenty of room. But I didn't know that as Andrew was backing these cars up. But you can see the last couple cars over there on the inbound track there on the left are just fouling that switch. If it was a slightly shorter train, would not have been a big deal. Or if it was a slightly longer track, it would be no big deal. But they were fouling that switch. So right here is where that double slip switch was previously, which I absolutely hated because there were 4 switches in very close proximity to each other. And it was hard to figure out which ones are switched and which ones need to be switched, and did I do it right, and did the train end up going in the right direction? So the way I got around that, one of the viewers asked, how did I get rid of it? Well, I just deleted the tracks leading up to it. And rather than have the switches all at the same point, I just separated them by, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 feet. You can see the two switches there. So they're separated by a little bit, and it got rid of that double switch. And I think it looks better, and it's a lot easier to use. So Andrew has completed the first task on his loop run. He's dropped those cars off on the far right. Now he'll go down to the other end of the track and pick up the cars destined to go down to Tidewater. And you can see that this yard is filled up with just that one train. So he'll do a run around on a freight track, go down to the western edge of the yard, then back up onto the cars heading down to Tidewater. You can get a sense of those three hopper cars kind of following that switch over there on the far right. So if you pulled up maybe just a little bit further, not sure if there was still enough room to do that or not, I don't know. But it's not going to affect the operation of the railroad here, because the local switcher is going to come over there and take care of those cars very quickly. There's that mechanical box there, or whatever that is, that needs to be moved. That was actually sitting on the tracks there, so little details that I see as I go along that need to be corrected. So now Andrew is backing up onto the cut of cars that he's going to pull down to Tidewater, and that's going to bring us to the end of part one of the loop video. Part two will be the it'll be a quick video of Andrew dragging these cars down to Tidewater, and we'll do that here very soon. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. As always, if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Give me a like, leave some comments. I learned a lot of stuff from you guys about operating the railroad, and some things that you've noticed that I could change, and like to hear from you guys and have some conversations with you. But this is going to do it for this video. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll watch Andrew connect to these cars, and that'll bring us to the end of this video. So hope you guys are doing well. We'll see you soon.